Please don't kill me. I beg you. I'll do anything you ask. I promise." The words tore from her throat as the gun barrel pressed cold against her temple. Around her, 22 bodies lay motionless in the darkening forest, their blood seeping into the American soil. She was supposed to be next. But fate had other plans. Because miles away, in a glittering auction house where human lives were bought like furniture, a man with eyes like winter storms was about to make a decision that would change everything. This is the story of how a girl named Zara went from being merchandise in a cage to something far more dangerous, the object of a billionaire's obsession. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next in this explosive series. And I need to know, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love connecting with you all. Now, let's dive into this insane story. Zara Monroe had always known her uncle was capable of terrible things, but she never imagined he'd sell her. The memory was still fresh. 3 weeks ago, when her uncle sat her down with that fake, sympathetic smile and told her about the opportunity. A wealthy family needed help. Good pay. Simple work. Just sign here. She was 19, desperate to help pay off the debts that had crushed their Chicago household after her parents died in a car accident 2 years ago. Her uncle had taken her and her younger brother Marcus in, but the financial burden was crushing him. Or so he claimed. She was desperate to save her 12-year-old brother from the same fate, desperate to keep him safe and in school. So she signed. Her uncle had been insistent, hovering over her shoulder as Zara read through the contract. "It's a wonderful opportunity, sweetheart," he'd cooed, his voice dripping with false warmth. 2 years of work, and all our problems go away. Marcus can stay in school. We can keep the house. Think of your brother. That's what had convinced her. Not the promise of wealth or adventure, but the thought of 12-year-old Marcus having to drop out of school, of him going hungry, of him ending up on the streets. Their uncle had taken them in after their parents' death, but things had been difficult. Gambling debts mounting, loan sharks calling, the house on the verge of foreclosure. He'd made it clear that he couldn't support them both much longer. Zara had thought this was her chance to finally fix things, to be the hero her little brother needed. She'd been so wrong. The lie unraveled the moment she arrived at the address, a warehouse on the outskirts of the city where girls disappeared and nobody asked questions. Her uncle had driven her there, his silence throughout the 40-minute drive setting her nerves on edge. When they pulled up to the rusted metal building with blacked-out windows and graffiti-covered walls, every instinct in Zara's body screamed danger. "Uncle James, this doesn't look like a house," she'd said, her voice trembling. "They're renovating," he'd replied, not meeting her eyes. "Just go inside. Someone will meet you." "Uncle James, please?" "Get out of the car, Zara." His voice had been cold, final. When she hesitated, he'd practically pushed her out, tossing her small duffel bag after her. 2 men had emerged from the warehouse, large, intimidating, with dead eyes and cruel smiles. One of them had a scar running down his face. The other had tattoos covering his neck. "This her?" the scarred one had asked. "Yes," her uncle had said, accepting an envelope thick with cash. "Just like we agreed." "Uncle James, what's happening? What did you do?" Zara's voice had risen in panic. But he'd already gotten back in the car, starting the engine. She'd run after him, pounding on the window, screaming for him to stop, to explain, to not leave her here. But he'd driven away without looking back, and the 2 men had grabbed her, dragging her into the warehouse as she kicked and screamed. Now, as she sat in a locked room with dozens of other terrified young women, Zara understood the truth. She'd been trafficked, sold by the very person who was supposed to protect her. The room was windowless, cold, smelling of mildew and fear. 23 girls total, all of them trapped in this nightmare. Some were American like her. Others spoke Spanish, Russian, Vietnamese, a horrifying collection of languages that told stories of girls stolen from all over the world. "Stop crying," hissed one of the guards, a woman with dead eyes and a cigarette hanging from her lips. Her name was Wei, and she seemed to take particular pleasure in their suffering. "You're the fresh one, the virgin. You'll make us a fortune tonight, so smile." Zara's stomach turned. They'd examined her on her second day here, a humiliating, invasive process conducted by a woman who treated her like livestock being inspected before sale. When they'd confirmed her virginity, Wei had actually smiled. "You're going to be our star," she'd said. "Do you know what men pay for girls like you? Untouched, young, pretty? Millions." Around her, some girls had already accepted their fate, applying makeup with shaking hands. A girl named Sophia, who'd been here for 2 months, had explained the system in broken English. The ones who cooperate get sold to private buyers, rich men who keep them as pets. The ones who fight. She'd made a throat-slitting gesture. Others sobbed quietly into their hands. A few stared at nothing, their minds already broken, their spirits crushed before they'd even been sold. One girl in the corner, barely 16, rocked back and forth, humming a lullaby in a language Zara didn't recognize. Her eyes were vacant, empty. Whatever horrors she'd endured had taken her somewhere else entirely. Zara had tried to befriend some of them, to form alliances, to plan an escape. But fear kept them isolated, each girl trapped in her own private nightmare. "Listen up!" A man burst through the door, gun visible at his hip. He was Boss Chen, the man who ran the operation with his wife Wei. His eyes were cold, calculating, devoid of any humanity. "We've got a problem. The feds are here with a warrant. We're moving you all out. Now." Panic erupted. The girls screamed, clutched each other, their worst fears realized. The guards screamed orders, herding them toward a back exit where a truck waited with its engine running. Zara's mind raced. This was it. Her chance to scream, to run, to get help. The police were right outside. If she could just make enough noise, if she could just alert them. But then she saw the guns, saw the cold calculation in their eyes, saw Wei grab the 16-year-old girl by the hair and press a pistol to her temple. "Anyone makes a sound, she dies first," Wei snarled. "Then the rest of you. Understand?" "Anyone who hesitates gets a bullet," Boss Chen announced, chambering around in his weapon for emphasis. "Move." They were loaded into the truck like cargo, like animals being transported to slaughter. Zara found herself pressed against other girls, all of them too terrified to speak. Sophia was next to her, tears streaming silently down her face. The 16-year-old girl was still humming, that vacant look in her eyes. The truck rumbled to life, driving for what felt like hours before finally stopping. The girls were thrown around in the darkness, unable to see, barely able to breathe in the stifling heat. When the doors finally opened, they were in the middle of nowhere, thick woods surrounding them on all sides, the late afternoon sun filtering through the trees, casting long shadows across a dirt road that seemed to lead nowhere. "Out, all of you. Walk." They stumbled forward, following a dirt path deeper into the forest. Zara's heart hammered against her ribs. Something was wrong. This wasn't a safe house. This wasn't a new location. The guards were too tense, too quiet. Boss Chen kept checking his phone, his jaw clenched tight. This was an execution. Sophia seemed to realize it at the same time. She grabbed Zara's hand, squeezing tight. "If we run," she whispered, "run toward the river. If you hear water, follow it. Rivers lead to people." When they reached a small clearing near a river, the sound of rushing water suddenly loud in the eerie silence. The truth revealed itself. The lead trafficker, Boss Chen, who'd been smoking the entire walk, raised his weapon, his face showing no emotion whatsoever. Nothing personal, ladies, just tying up loose ends. The feds know too much. Can't risk any of you talking. Time seemed to slow. Zara saw him cock the gun, saw the other guards raising their weapons. She saw Sophia cross herself, whispering a prayer in Spanish. She saw the 16-year-old girl stop humming for the first time in days, a single tear rolling down her cheek, as if she finally understood what was happening. The first shots rang out like thunder, echoing through the trees, scattering birds from their perches. Girls screamed, ran, fell. Zara bolted, adrenaline flooding her system, her heart pounding so hard she thought it would explode. She ran toward the trees, toward darkness, toward any chance of survival. But someone shoved her from behind, another panicking girl, and she went down hard, her knees slamming into the dirt, her palms scraping against rocks and roots. A body collapsed on top of her, one of the other girls, blood pouring from a wound in her back, soaking Zara's hair and face. The weight was crushing, suffocating. Zara could feel the girl's final breath against her neck, could feel the moment life left her body. She froze, played dead, felt the weight of death pressing down on her as more shots echoed through the trees. Each gunshot was a life ended, a girl who would never go home, never see her family again, never have a chance at the future she'd been promised. Zara heard Sophia's voice cut short mid-prayer, heard the 16-year-old girl's humming end with a sickening thud, heard bodies hitting the ground one after another, like a macabre countdown. Then, finally, silence. A silence more terrible than the gunshots. A silence that meant 22 lives had been extinguished like candles in the wind. Count them, Boss Chen's voice ordered, cold and businesslike. Footsteps approached, boots crunching on leaves and twigs. Someone grabbed bodies, dragging them toward the river. Zara kept her eyes closed, barely breathing, praying they wouldn't notice the slight rise and fall of her chest beneath the dead girl's weight. She could hear them talking, casual conversation about covering their tracks, about dinner plans, about a basketball game, as if they hadn't just murdered 22 innocent people, as if this was just another day at work. 23, that's all of them, one of the guards confirmed. Good. Dump them and let's go. We need to torch the warehouse before the feds finish processing the warrant. But before they could reach her, a newer guard, a young guy who'd only been with the crew a few days, stopped. He stared down at Zara for a long moment, and she could feel his gaze burning into her, studying her. Her heart hammered. Was he going to shoot her? Expose her? End this charade? Then he bent close and whispered, "You're the virgin, aren't you? The premium merchandise." Terror spiked through her, cold and sharp. She didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't respond. "Don't move. Don't speak. I'll come back for you." He walked away, helped the others dispose of the bodies, and when Boss Chen finally left with the truck, the young guard returned alone. She could hear his footsteps approaching, deliberate and purposeful. Zara sat up, covered in blood that wasn't hers, shaking so hard she could barely stand. Her clothes were soaked, her hair matted with blood and dirt. She looked like she'd crawled out of hell. The guard was young, maybe mid-20s, Korean-American by the look of him, with nervous eyes that kept darting around as if expecting Boss Chen to return. "You're alive because you're worth more breathing than dead," he said bluntly, pulling out rope from his jacket. "I'm taking you somewhere. If you try to run, I'll kill you myself. Understand?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face, unable to form words. Her throat was raw from holding back screams. He tied her wrists in front of her, not as tight as he could have, she noticed, and gagged her with a strip of cloth. "Don't make me regret this," he muttered, more to himself than to her. He led her back through the woods to his car. a beat-up Honda Civic that looked out of place with his criminal activities. The drive was silent except for her muffled sobs and the hum of the engine. When they arrived at his apartment, a grimy place in a rundown part of the city, reeking of smoke and cheap liquor, he untied her and tossed her a towel. "Bathroom's there. Clean yourself up. You've got an auction tonight." An auction? The word barely made it past her lips. Her voice was hoarse, broken. "You're a virgin. In certain circles, that's worth a fortune. Boss Chen was going to auction you off before this police shit happened. Now that money's mine." He lit a cigarette, his hands trembling slightly. "I saved your life. This is payment." Horror washed over her. Please don't do this. I have a brother. He needs me. I'll do anything." He laughed harshly, but there was no humor in it. "Your uncle sold you. You think your family gives a damn about you? And even if they did, what are they going to do? Your uncle's probably on the run right now, spending the money he got for you. Then let me go. Please. I won't tell anyone. I'll disappear. You'll never see me again." He studied her for a long moment, something almost like pity flickering across his face. Then it hardened again. "You want to die in those woods instead? Because that's your other option. I can take you back right now. Put a bullet in your head. Your choice." She didn't answer. Couldn't answer. "That's what I thought. Now shower. You smell like death. Someone's coming to get you ready, and they're not going to want to touch you looking like that." Zara stumbled to the bathroom, her legs barely supporting her. She caught sight of herself in the mirror and almost didn't recognize the girl staring back. Covered in blood, eyes hollow with trauma, looking like something from a horror movie. She showered, watching the blood swirl down the drain, blood that belonged to 22 dead girls whose names she barely knew. Girls who should still be alive. Girls whose families would never know what happened to them. Survivors' guilt crashed over her in waves. Why her? Why had she survived when they hadn't? What made her life more valuable than Sophia's, or the 16-year-old girl's, or any of the others? When she emerged, wrapped in a towel that smelled like mildew, there was a woman in the apartment, heavily made up, wearing tight clothes, carrying bags of supplies. "This her?" the woman asked, chewing gum loudly. "Yeah, make her perfect. This needs to work." The woman circled Zara like a shark. "She's pretty, young, good bone structure. I can work with this." She looked at the guard. "But I need 2 hours minimum. You've got 90 minutes. Then stop talking and let me work." Across the city, in a sleek penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, Kwon Jae-hyun stood at the window with a glass of whiskey in hand and murder in his eyes. The Chicago skyline glittered before him like a sea of diamonds, but he saw none of it. All he could see was red. Red fury at his brother's latest betrayal, red anger at the disrespect, red rage at the family legacy being treated like garbage. "If it weren't for the fact we share blood, I'd put a bullet in you right now," he said coldly, his voice like razors cutting through silk. Behind him, his younger brother, Kwon Min-jae, sprawled on the leather couch, arms crossed defensively, his handsome face set in a petulant scowl. At 29, he should have been a man. Instead, he acted like a spoiled teenager who'd never heard the word no. "It's just a watch, Hyung. Stop being so dramatic." "Just a watch?" Jae-hyun turned slowly, his movement predatory, dangerous. His handsome face was twisted in fury, his jaw clenched so tight it was a wonder his teeth didn't crack. "That watch belonged to our grandfather. It's been in our family for 3 generations. Grandfather wore it when he built his first company. Father wore it when he expanded into America. And you pawned it for gambling money? I needed cash. You need a job. You need to grow up. You need to stop acting like a spoiled child who thinks the world owes him everything. Jae-hyun's voice rose with each word, his control slipping. I've given you everything, a place to live, money to spend, opportunities at the company. And how do you repay me? By gambling it away and stealing from our family. Min-jae's jaw tightened, his hands clenching into fists. He hated when Jae-hyun spoke to him like this, like he was worthless, like he was nothing but a disappointment. Ever since their father died 5 years ago and left the billion-dollar tech empire to Jae-hyun, Min-jae had been treated like an afterthought, like a child who couldn't be trusted with anything important. The will had been clear, everything to the eldest son. Min-jae got a trust fund, generous by any standard, but it came with conditions and restrictions. Jae-hyun controlled the purse strings, decided what Min-jae could and couldn't do. It was suffocating, humiliating, infuriating. I'll get it back, Min-jae muttered, not meeting his brother's eyes. Damn right you will, because I tracked it down. Jae-hyun's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his expression darkened further. It's being auctioned tonight at an underground market. I'm going to buy it back, and you're paying me every cent, even if I have to garnish it from your trust fund for the next 10 years. Before Min-jae could respond, the door opened and Jae-hyun's fiancée walked in. Lee Na-yeon, elegant and poised in a designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She moved with the practiced grace of someone who'd been groomed for high society since birth. What's going on? She asked, her voice carefully neutral, though her eyes immediately assessed the situation with sharp intelligence. Min-jae sold our grandfather's watch, Jae-hyun said flatly, the disappointment evident in every syllable. Na-yeon's eyes widened in what appeared to be genuine shock, though there was something calculated in her response. Min-jae, how could you? That watch is a family heirloom. It's priceless. Oh, spare me the lecture, Min-jae snapped, standing abruptly. His face flushed with anger and shame. You're not my mother. You're not even family yet. No, but I'm about to be your sister-in-law. Show some respect. Jae-hyun's phone rang again, cutting through the tension. He answered, listened intently, his expression growing more focused. I'll be there in 30 minutes, he said, then hung up. He looked at Na-yeon, his anger at Min-jae temporarily set aside. I'm going to the auction. I'll be back late. Don't wait up. She crossed to him, placing a perfectly manicured hand on his arm, her touch gentle and concerned. Be careful. Those places are dangerous. Maybe you should take security with you. I'll have Taeyang. That's enough. He kissed her cheek, a perfunctory gesture that held more duty than passion. Make sure Min-jae doesn't do anything else stupid while I'm gone. He nodded and left, his footsteps echoing through the penthouse with finality. Min-jae watched him go, resentment burning in his chest like acid. One day he'd take everything from his perfect older brother, the company, the money, the respect, everything. And he wouldn't have to beg for scraps anymore. Na-yeon stood by the window watching Jae-hyun's car pull out of the building's garage far below. Then she turned to Min-jae, and her expression shifted subtly, the concerned fiancé mask slipping to reveal something harder, more calculating underneath. You're an idiot, she said quietly. Excuse me? Selling the watch, drawing attention. We talked about keeping a low profile until after the wedding. Min-jae's expression changed too, the petulant younger brother transforming into something more sinister. I needed money for the down payment. For the thing we discussed. That could have waited. Now he's suspicious. More suspicious than usual. She moved closer, lowering her voice even though they were alone. 3 weeks, Min-jae. 3 weeks until the wedding. Then I'll have legal access to everything. Then we can make our move. But not if you keep making mistakes like this. He treats me like garbage, Min-jae growled. I'm sick of waiting. Then you're a fool. Her eyes flashed with cold fire. Jae-hyun has billions, Minjae, billions. We get one shot at this. So we wait, we plan, and when the time is right, we take everything. But patience is key. She was right, and he knew it. But that didn't make the waiting any easier. The underground auction house was hidden beneath a legitimate antique shop in the industrial district, the kind of place that looked abandoned from the outside, but thrummed with illegal activity beneath. Jae-hyun descended the concrete stairs with his friend and business partner, Park Tae-yang, at his side. Tae-yang was shorter than Jae-hyun, with a round face that made him look friendly and approachable, useful traits in business negotiations. But his eyes were sharp, missing nothing. "This place gives me the creeps," Tae-yang muttered, glancing at the armed guards stationed at regular intervals. "Remind me why we couldn't just buy the watch back through normal channels?" "Because the pawn shop sold it to a private collector who specializes in illegal acquisitions. This is the only way." "Just stay close. We get the watch and leave. No complications." The underground room opened up before them, far larger than the entrance suggested, with high ceilings and elaborate lighting. It was packed with wealthy men in expensive suits, collectors, criminals, and everyone in between. Some he recognized from business circles, others from news reports about organized crime. Items were displayed on a rotating platform in the center. Stolen art that should be in museums, rare weapons that should be in police evidence lockers, ancient artifacts that belong to other countries. Jae-hyun barely paid attention, his eyes scanning for his grandfather's watch. The auction moved quickly, tens of millions of dollars changing hands with casual bids, as if these men were buying groceries rather than stolen treasures. Then the auctioneer's voice changed, becoming more animated, more excited. "And now, gentlemen, something truly special. A rare offering that we don't see often in these circles." The lights dimmed dramatically, and a single spotlight illuminated the platform. A cage was wheeled onto the stage. Inside was a girl. Jae-hyun's breath caught in his throat, his whiskey-induced calm evaporating instantly. She wore a sheer black outfit that left almost nothing to the imagination, designed to display rather than conceal. Her face was partially covered by a decorative mask, her wrists and ankles shackled with what appeared to be gold chains, though Jae-hyun knew they were probably just painted steel. But even through the styling and the fear, even through the degradation of her presentation, Jae-hyun could see she was beautiful and absolutely terrified. Her skin was a rich brown, glowing under the harsh spotlight. Her body trembled visibly, though she was clearly trying to hold still. And her eyes, visible through the mask, were filled with tears that she was desperately trying not to shed. "A rare find," the auctioneer continued with disturbing enthusiasm, as if he were selling a vintage car rather than a human being. 19 years old, African descent, American-born, completely untouched, verified virgin by our medical team, obedient, trainable, and absolutely exquisite. Fresh acquisition. She's been in our possession less than 24 hours, gentlemen. You'll be her first and only owner. Starting bid, $50 million. The room erupted in excited murmurs and immediate bids, the men leaning forward like wolves scenting blood. "What the hell?" Jae-hyun breathed, his voice barely audible over the commotion. "Don't get involved," Tae-yang warned urgently, grabbing his arm. "This isn't our business. We're here for the watch, remember? We get it and leave. Don't draw attention." But Jae-hyun couldn't look away. His eyes were locked on the girl in the cage, on the way her chest rose and fell with rapid, panicked breathing, on the way her fingers clutched at the bars, on the silent tears that were now streaming freely down her face. She was someone's daughter, someone's sister. She had a name, a life, dreams and hopes that had been stolen from her. And these monsters were bidding on her like she was property. 60 million, someone called from the front row. a man Jae-hyun recognized as a hedge fund manager. 80 million, countered another voice. 100 million, a third man shouted, his excitement palpable. Jae-hyun's hands clenched into fists, his nails digging into his palms hard enough to draw blood. This was insane, illegal, monstrous. This was human trafficking happening right in front of him, in his city, and all these men in their expensive suits were treating it like entertainment. 150 million! A lecherous old man shouted, practically salivating. Jae-hyun recognized him, Carlo Marchetti, a real estate mogul with rumors of underage girls following him for years. The man was in his 70s, his eyes hungry and cruel as they roamed over the girl's body. Something inside Jae-hyun snapped. He'd spent his entire adult life building something legitimate, something good. He'd worked 70-hour weeks to honor his father's legacy, to grow the company ethically, to prove that success didn't require moral compromise. He'd always played by the rules, always done the right thing, even when it was harder, even when it cost him. But watching this girl, this terrified 19-year-old girl, being sold to the highest bidder, watching these predators lick their lips in anticipation, it awakened something primal in him, something protective, something furious. His father had taught him that with great wealth came great responsibility, that those who had power had an obligation to protect those who didn't. And right now, this girl had no power, no voice, no choice. But he did. 300 million, he said, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade, clear and absolute. The room went dead silent. Every head turned to stare at him. The auctioneer's mouth hung open in shock. Even the guards along the walls straightened, their attention suddenly focused on this unexpected bidder. Taeyang grabbed his arm harder, his voice urgent and panicked. "Are you insane? Jae-hyun, what are you doing? That's $300 million. Do you have any idea?" Jae-hyun shook him off, his eyes never leaving the girl in the cage. She'd stopped crying, shock replacing the fear on her face. She was staring at him with wide eyes, like she couldn't believe what she was hearing, like she thought this might be some kind of cruel joke. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and in that moment, something passed between them. An understanding, a connection, a silent promise that he would not let these monsters have her. The auctioneer recovered quickly, his shock transforming into barely contained greed. A bid this size meant a massive commission. 300 million from the gentleman in the back. Do I hear 350? 350 million? Anyone? Carlo Marchetti looked ready to counter, his face red with anger at being outbid. But his associate leaned in and whispered something in his ear, probably reminding him of cash flow issues, of other obligations, of the insanity of spending more than 300 million on a single girl, no matter how premium. He scowled deeply, his eyes promising violence, but he waved his hand dismissively and sat back. Going once. The auctioneer's gavel raised, his voice trembling with excitement. Going twice. He paused dramatically, milking the moment. Sold to the gentleman in the back for $300 million. The gavel came down with a crack that echoed through the silent room like a gunshot. Zara couldn't breathe. $300 million. Someone had just paid $300 million for her. Her mind couldn't process the number. It was incomprehensible, impossible. Why would anyone pay that much? What did he want from her? What kind of monster had that much money and chose to spend it on buying a human being? The cage door opened with a creak that sounded deafening in her ears. Hands, surprisingly gentle hands, removed her shackles, the metal falling away from her wrists and ankles. A heavy robe was draped over her shoulders, covering her exposed skin, and it felt like the first kindness she'd experienced in weeks. "Come with me," a deep voice said, and she looked up into the face of her buyer. She looked up into the face of her buyer, a man probably in his mid-30s, tall, easily over 6 feet, and imposing, with sharp features that could have been carved from granite. His eyes were dark, intense, holding both fury and something else that she couldn't quite identify. Concern? Regret? But that couldn't be right. People who bought other people didn't feel concern. He led her through a back corridor lined with concrete walls and dim lighting, away from the auction room and its monsters. She walked numbly, her legs barely functioning, certain this was just a different kind of nightmare. The auction house staff treated him with clear deference. They knew him, or at least knew his money was real. Outside, in a private parking area lit by harsh fluorescent lights, he stopped and turned to her. His friend stood a few feet away, looking worried and uncomfortable. "My name is Kwon Jae-hyun," he said carefully, his voice gentler now, as if speaking to a wounded animal that might bolt at any sudden movement. "I'm a CEO. I run a technology company. I'm engaged to be married in 3 weeks. And I need you to understand something right now. I have absolutely no intention of hurting you." Zara stared at him, disbelieving, waiting for the punchline, for the moment when the mask would drop and he'd reveal his true intentions. "I know you have no reason to trust me," Jae-hyun continued, seeming to read her thoughts. "I know what you must think of me, what you must think this is. But I need you to understand, I didn't buy you for that. I didn't buy you to use you or hurt you or any of the things those other men were planning." Her voice came out hoarse, damaged from the screaming in the forest, from the crying, from the fear. "Then what do you want from me?" "Nothing. I want nothing from you." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "When I saw you in that cage, when I heard them talking about you like you were property, I couldn't just sit there and let one of those monsters take you. So I did the only thing I could think of. I bought you myself." Tears spilled down her cheeks. She couldn't stop them anymore, couldn't hold back the emotion. "Why? Why would you do this? Nobody spends $300 million without wanting something in return." "Because it's the right thing to do." He said it simply, as if it was obvious, as if spending an incomprehensible amount of money to save a stranger was normal. "I have a younger brother, and if someone had him in a cage, I'd hope someone would do the same thing. Would pay whatever it cost to set him free." The raw honesty in his voice, the genuine pain in his eyes when he mentioned his brother, made her want to believe him, made her think that maybe, impossibly, this man was telling the truth. "Please," Jae-hyun said, gesturing to the car, a sleek black Mercedes that probably cost more than most houses. "Let me help you. Let me take you somewhere safe." Zara didn't have a choice. Not really. She could refuse. But then what? She had no money, no phone, no way to get anywhere. And the young guard who'd brought her to the auction might still be looking for her, ready to sell her to someone else if this deal fell through. At least this man, Kwon Jae-hyun, seemed different, seemed genuine. She slid into the passenger seat and the leather was soft, warm, and the seat was heated, slowly warming her chilled body. She pulled the robe tighter around herself, suddenly aware of how little she was wearing underneath, how exposed she felt. Jae-hyun got in the driver's side and his friend climbed into the back. "This is Park Tae-yang," Jae-hyun said, starting the engine. "He's my business partner and my oldest friend. You can trust him." Tae-yang gave her a gentle, sympathetic smile. "I'm sorry for what happened to you, but you're safe now. I've known Jae-hyun since college, and I can promise you, he means what he says. He's one of the good ones." As they drove through the Chicago night, the city lights blurring past in streaks of gold and white, Jae-hyun asked gently, "What's your name?" "Zara. Zara Monroe." "Zara." He repeated it softly, like he was committing it to memory, treating it with respect. "That's a beautiful name. Can you tell me how you ended up in that place? Only if you're comfortable sharing. But I need to know so I can help you properly." So she did. She told him everything. She told him about her parents, how they died in a car accident 2 years ago, leaving her and Marcus orphaned. She told him about her Uncle James, her father's brother, who'd taken them in but had always resented the burden. About his gambling addiction, his mounting debts, the dangerous people who'd started showing up at their door demanding payment. She told him about her younger brother Marcus, only 12 years old, and how she'd been desperate to keep him safe, to keep him in school, to give him a chance at a better life. About how her uncle had made it clear he couldn't afford to support them both much longer, that one of them might have to leave. She told him about her uncle's fake smile when he'd presented the opportunity, about the contract that had seemed too good to be true, about signing away her freedom because she thought she was saving her family. Her voice cracked when she described her uncle driving her to the warehouse, accepting the envelope of cash, driving away without looking back. "He sold me for $30,000, she whispered. "His own niece, my father's daughter. $30,000. She told him about the warehouse, about the 3 days of captivity in that cold, windowless room with 22 other girls. About Wei and Boss Chen, about the examinations, about being told she was premium merchandise because of her virginity. She told him about the police raid, about being loaded into the truck, about the terror of not knowing where they were going. And then she told him about the forest. Her voice broke completely when she described the clearing by the river, the way Boss Chen had raised his weapon with such casual indifference. She told him about the gunshots, about the screaming, about playing dead beneath another girl's body while 22 innocent people were murdered around her. "There was a girl named Sophia," Zara said, tears streaming down her face. "She was from Mexico. She'd been there for 2 months. She told me if we ran, to follow the river because rivers lead to people. But she didn't make it. None of them did. And there was this 16-year-old girl who just hummed this lullaby all the time because I think her mind was already broken. She stopped humming right before they shot her." Jae-hyun's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle twitching. In the back seat, Tae-young had gone pale, his hand covering his mouth. She told them about the young guard who'd spared her, about being tied up and taken to his apartment, about the woman who'd painted her face and dressed her like a doll for the auction. "I should be dead," Zara finished, her voice hollow. "I should be in that river with the others. I don't know why I survived. I don't know why Marcus doesn't have anyone left now except an uncle who sold me like I was nothing." By the time she finished, Jae-hyun had to pull over because his hands were shaking with rage. He turned to face her, his expression a mixture of fury and compassion. "You're safe now," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "I promise you, Zara, no one will hurt you again. Not while I'm alive. And we'll find Marcus. We'll make sure he's safe too." She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly. When they arrived at Jae-hyun's penthouse, Zara was overwhelmed by the sheer luxury of it all. The building, the private elevator, the massive space with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city. It all felt like a dream. Or maybe another nightmare. She wasn't sure anymore. Inside, she met Na-yeon and Min-jae. Na-yeon's smile was polite but cold, her eyes assessing Zara with barely concealed suspicion. Min-jae's gaze was different, predatory, hungry, making her skin crawl in a way that reminded her too much of the men at the auction. "This is Zara," Jae-hyun said firmly. "She'll be staying with us. Treat her with respect." Na-yeon's smile tightened, but she nodded. Min-jae said nothing, just continued to stare. Jae-hyun showed Zara to a guest room that was bigger than any space she'd ever called her own. He explained that the clothes in the closet had belonged to his late sister, that she should use whatever she needed. that the door locked from the inside for her safety. "Get some rest," he said gently. "Tomorrow we'll start figuring everything out. Finding your brother, getting you documents, deciding what comes next. But tonight, just rest. You're safe now." After he left, she locked the door and collapsed onto the bed, her body finally giving in to exhaustion. But her mind kept spinning, kept replaying everything. The forest, the auction, this impossible rescue. Over the next few days, Zara tried to settle in, but it was far from easy. Jae-hyun was kind, respectful, never pressuring her for anything. He'd hired investigators to search for Marcus, had arranged for a therapist, had given her space and safety she hadn't known in weeks. The investigators had reported back quickly. Marcus was still with Uncle James, still attending school, seemingly unaware of what had happened to his sister. Jae-hyun had assigned people to watch the house discreetly, to make sure Marcus was safe while they figured out the legal path forward. "We can't just take him," Jae-hyun had explained carefully. "Your uncle is his legal guardian. We need to build a case, prove he's unfit, get the courts involved. But I promise you, Zara, we will get him out of there. We will keep him safe." Nayeon remained distant and cold, watching Zara with suspicious eyes, making small, cutting comments that felt like tests or warnings. "How convenient that you ended up here," she'd said one morning over coffee, her voice sweet, but her eyes sharp. "Rescued by a billionaire. Some girls have all the luck." But Min-jae was the real problem. He stared constantly, made inappropriate comments, found excuses to be near her. Once, he'd cornered her in the kitchen, whispering, "You're wasted on my brother. He's too proper, too controlled. I could show you what real passion feels like." She'd started locking her door at night, her survival instincts on high alert. The memories of the warehouse and the forest never far from her mind. Then one afternoon, when both Jae-hyun and Nayeon were supposedly out, Min-jae made his move. Zara was in her room when the door suddenly opened. She'd forgotten to lock it, a mistake that would haunt her. Min-jae stepped inside, locking the door behind him with a deliberate click that made her blood run cold. "What are you doing?" she demanded, backing away. "Get out." "Relax," he said, advancing with that predatory smile. "I just want to talk. Get out." Her voice rose in panic, her heart hammering against her ribs. Or what? He moved closer, and she could smell alcohol on his breath. "You'll scream? No one's here, Zara. No one can save you this time. Please." The word came out as a whisper, terror choking her voice. After everything she'd survived, after everything she'd escaped, was this how it ended? He lunged. Zara fought with everything she had, kicking, clawing, screaming, but he was stronger, grabbing her wrists, forcing her against the wall. The door exploded inward with a crash that shook the room. Jae-hyun stood there, and the look on his face was pure, murderous rage. He must have come home early, must have heard her screams. He crossed the room in 2 strides and ripped Min-jae away from Zara with terrifying strength, slamming him against the opposite wall so hard the drywall cracked. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Jae-hyun roared, his voice barely human. Min-jae laughed bitterly, blood already trickling from his lip. "What does it look like? You buy a girl like that, and you expect me not to sample the merchandise?" Jae-hyun's fist connected with his brother's jaw. Once, twice, 3 times. Each blow punctuated by a rage that had been building for years. "She's not merchandise!" Jae-hyun shouted, hitting him again. "She's a person, a human being, and you put your hands on her in my house." Nayeon appeared in the doorway, eyes wide with what looked like genuine shock. "Jae-hyun, stop." But he didn't stop, not until Min-jae was on the floor, blood dripping from his split lip and broken nose, curled up and gasping. "Get out," Jae-hyun said, his voice deadly calm now, which was somehow more terrifying than the shouting. "Pack your things and get out of my house." Now. You have 1 hour. Min-jae staggered to his feet, glaring with pure hatred. You'll regret this, Hyung. Both of you. You chose some random girl over your own blood. My blood? Jae-hyun's voice was ice. You stopped being my brother the moment you tried to assault someone under my protection. Now get out before I do something we'll both regret. The only thing I regret is not doing this years ago. Get out. After Min-jae left, slamming doors and cursing, Jae-hyun turned to Zara. His expression immediately softened, the rage melting into concern. Are you okay? Did he hurt you? She shook her head, tears streaming down her face, unable to form words. He'd saved her again. This man who owed her nothing had saved her again. I'm so sorry, he said quietly, his voice breaking slightly. I should have seen this coming. I should have protected you better. I should have never left you alone with him in the house. You did protect me, she whispered. You saved me. Nayeon stepped forward, and for once, her expression seemed genuinely sympathetic. Zara, I had no idea he would do something like this. I'm sorry. This should never have happened. But Zara barely heard her. All she could focus on was Jae-hyun, the man who'd spent a fortune to free her from a cage, who'd just beaten his own brother to protect her, who'd kept every promise he'd made. Thank you, she whispered, her voice breaking. Thank you for not giving up on me. You don't have to thank me, he said gently, carefully touching her shoulder, his touch respectful, comforting. You're under my protection, and I keep my promises. Always. That night, Zara couldn't sleep. Her mind kept replaying the attack, but also what came after. The way Jae-hyun had defended her without hesitation, without question. The fury in his eyes when Min-jae had called her merchandise, the gentle concern in his voice when he'd made sure she was okay. She was starting to feel something she shouldn't, something dangerous. She was falling for him. And that terrified her more than anything, because Kwon Jae-hyun belonged to someone else. In 3 weeks, he'd marry Nayeon, and Zara would be... What? A rescued girl living in his house? A charity case? A reminder of his good deed? She couldn't stay here forever, but she also had nowhere else to go. Marcus was still with their uncle, still in danger. She had no money, no job prospects, no way to build a life on her own after everything that had happened. And worse, she didn't want to leave, because despite everything, despite the impossibility of it, despite the fact that he was engaged, despite knowing she could never have him, she was falling in love with the man who'd saved her life. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Min-jae sat in a dingy motel room, his face swollen and bruised, his pride shattered, ice pack pressed against his jaw. His phone buzzed. A text from Nayeon. We need to talk. This changes everything. He smiled through the pain, wincing as the expression pulled at his split lip. Yes, it did change everything. His brother had chosen that girl over him, had beaten him, humiliated him, thrown him out like garbage. Now the gloves were off. Nayeon wanted to wait until after the wedding to make their move, to take everything from Jae-hyun legally and quietly, but Min-jae was done waiting. Done playing nice. Done pretending to be the grateful younger brother. If Jae-hyun wanted that girl so badly, if he was willing to destroy his own family for her, then Min-jae would make sure they both paid. He'd take everything. The company, the money, the girl, everything. And this time, he wouldn't make the mistake of underestimating his perfect older brother. And in a dark corner of the penthouse, Nayeon stood alone, staring at Jae-hyun's closed bedroom door. She'd seen the way he'd looked at Zara tonight. Protective, gentle, concerned in a way he'd never looked at her. Their engagement had always been a business arrangement more than a love match. Both families benefited from the union. Jae-hyun was respectful, Dutiful, but never passionate, never protective like that. 3 weeks until the wedding. 3 weeks to secure her future. But suddenly, that future felt less certain than ever. Because Zara Monroe wasn't just a rescued girl anymore. She was a threat. And Na-yeon had spent her entire life learning how to eliminate threats before they could destroy her carefully laid plans. She pulled out her phone and sent a text to a number she'd hoped she wouldn't have to use. "I need information on someone. Zara Monroe. Everything you can find. Her past, her family, anything that can be used." The response came quickly. "Consider it done." Na-yeon smiled coldly. If Jae-hyun wanted to play the hero, wanted to bring this girl into their lives and disrupt everything, then he'd learn that heroes often paid the highest price. And Zara would learn that in Na-yeon's world, there was no room for competition. One way or another, the girl would have to go. Don't you dare leave now. Things are about to get absolutely insane in episode 2. Hit that subscribe button right now, smash that notification bell, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what you think is going to happen next. Will Zara and Jae-hyun's connection grow into something more dangerous? What are Na-yeon and Min-jae really plotting? Will Marcus be found safe? And what happens when the past Zara thought she'd escaped comes back to destroy everything? You need to be here for the next episode. Trust me, you're going to lose your mind. See you very soon.